It was a regular Monday morning at the bank. The clock showed 9:02 a.m. Sunlight came through the glass windows, and people stood in line waiting to be served. The staff at the front desk were chatting casually, not really paying attention to the customers. Then, the door opened. A black woman walked in. Her natural curly hair was big, beautiful, and free. She wore a simple dress and carried a leather notebook in her hand. As soon as she walked in, the smiles on some faces turned into smirks. One staff member leaned toward another and whispered, "Did she even comb her hair?" The other laughed. "She looks like she just woke up." A few of them chuckled. No one tried to stop them. They didn't know why she was here. They didn't care either. The woman heard everything, but she didn't say a word. She just walked slowly to the waiting area and sat down quietly. She opened her notebook and started writing something. Behind the counter, a young intern named Jamal watched everything. He didn't laugh. In fact, he looked a little nervous. The jokes reminded him of someone. His own sister, who had similar hair and was often bullied in school. He looked at the woman again. She looked calm, almost peaceful, but her eyes were sharp, focused. She kept writing in her notebook, page after page. 15 minutes passed. The front desk lady finally walked up to her and asked, without making eye contact, "Do you need help?" The woman looked up with a soft smile. "I'm here for the 9:30 interview." The staff member raised her eyebrow, surprised. "Interview? For what position?" "Senior manager," the woman said simply. The lady forced a fake smile. "Oh, okay. Please wait." She walked away quickly and whispered to her coworkers again, "She's here for the manager job. Can you believe it?" Again, the others laughed. "She should be applying for cleaning staff, not management," someone said. Jamal heard it all. He wanted to say something, but he didn't. He just looked down at his screen and pretended to work. The woman kept waiting, still quiet, still writing. At one point, she looked up, saw Jamal watching her, and gave him a small, knowing smile. Jamal looked away, feeling embarrassed. Soon, the hiring manager came out of the office, holding a clipboard. He looked around and said, "Ms. Lillian Carter." The woman stood up and walked toward him. The manager's face changed. His eyes widened for a second, then he tried to hide his shock. "You're the applicant?" he asked, blinking. She nodded with quiet confidence. "Yes, I'm Lillian." The staff behind the counter froze. One of them dropped their coffee cup. It spilled all over the desk. No one said a word. Lillian followed the hiring manager into the office, her notebook still in her hand. Jamal watched her go, heart racing. Something told him this was not just any interview. Something was about to change, and none of them were ready for it. The door to the office closed behind Lillian. Silence filled the room for a moment. Outside, the staff still whispered. Some stared at the closed door, shocked. Others avoided eye contact. The woman they had laughed at just walked into an interview for a senior manager position. Jamal, the intern, sat at his desk, his mind spinning. He kept thinking about her calm face, her confident walk, and the notebook she never stopped writing in. Who was she really? Inside the interview room, Lillian sat straight, her notebook resting on her lap. She had a soft smile on her face, but her eyes showed strength. The hiring manager, Mr. Grant, looked at her file, confused. "Miss Carter, your resume is impressive," he said slowly. "But I have to admit, I didn't expect you to be so." He stopped himself. Lillian raised her eyebrow. "So informal," he said quickly. "I mean your look, your appearance." Lillian nodded. "You mean my hair?" He froze, then forced a chuckle. No, that's not what I meant." She didn't argue. She just opened her notebook and started flipping through pages. Mr. Grant cleared his throat. "Anyway, why did you choose this branch for your application? There are many others." Lillian looked up. Her voice was calm, but clear. "I've been watching this branch for the last 3 weeks." Mr. Grant blinked. "Watching?" She turned the notebook toward him. Page after page had notes, names, dates, behaviors. "This is what I saw," she said. "Poor customer service, mocking comments, no sense of respect or diversity." Mr. Grant leaned forward, surprised. "How did you?" "I came in as a customer. 3 times. Once I stood in line for 20 minutes and no one even looked at me. Another time, someone told me to come back later before even hearing why I came. Today, I heard 2 staff members laughing at my hair." Mr. Grant looked embarrassed. He rubbed the back of his neck. Lillian continued, "But I didn't walk out. I sat. I waited. I took notes, because I wasn't here just for a job. I was here to study the environment and see if it needs change." Mr. Grant slowly nodded. "And what's your conclusion?" Lillian closed her notebook. "It needs strong leadership, fair leadership, someone who sees value, not appearance. I believe I can provide that." He stared at her for a long time. He could see the confidence in her eyes. Not arrogance, just calm, steady power. She was clearly not just another applicant. Meanwhile, outside the room, Jamal couldn't sit still. He opened his laptop and searched her name. Lillian Carter. What he found made his jaw drop. An article read, "Meet Lillian Carter, former janitor turned executive, the youngest black woman to lead a banking district." Another said, "Lillian Carter's journey, from mockery to millionaire, and still wearing her crown." Jamal's eyes widened. "No way," he whispered. "She's not here for a job. She's here to change everything." He looked around. The same staff who had laughed minutes ago were now quiet. Some looked confused. Others looked nervous. Inside the office, the interview was still going. "Your background is very impressive," Mr. Grant said. "But I have to ask, why not apply at our headquarters? Why a small branch like this?" Lillian smiled. "Because real change begins at the roots. And sometimes, the places that laugh the loudest need the deepest lessons." Mr. Grant couldn't argue with that. He leaned back in his chair and sighed. "I'll be honest, I didn't expect this, but I think you may be exactly what we need." Lillian stood, holding her notebook. "I'm not here for your approval. I'm here to offer change, if you're ready for it." She walked toward the door and paused. "Oh, and by the way," she added, "your intern, Jamal. He's got a good heart. Don't let this place break it." Then she opened the door. Everyone looked up. She walked out with the same quiet grace. She didn't look at anyone, just walked straight to the exit. Jamal stood quickly. "Ma'am, wait." Lillian stopped and turned. Jamal stepped forward. I know who you are. I just didn't say anything. I didn't have the courage." She gave him a warm smile. "Courage doesn't always come first, but when it comes, use it." Then she left. And in that moment, Jamal knew this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. Jamal couldn't sleep that night. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the name Lillian Carter echoing in his mind. The woman they all laughed at was a legend, a woman who once cleaned floors and now held the power to clean up something much bigger, their broken workplace. Her words kept ringing in his ears. Courage doesn't always come first, but when it comes, use it. He had stayed quiet when the staff mocked her. He had watched silently while they disrespected her. And now, he couldn't stop thinking about it. The next morning, Jamal arrived at the bank early, earlier than anyone else. He sat at his desk, watching the door, hoping maybe she'd come back. But she didn't. Instead, by 9:10 a.m., the gossip had already started again. "I heard she walked in like she owned the place," one teller said. "Yeah, and then walked out like she was too good for us," another added. "Just because she got lucky somewhere doesn't mean she'll be hired here." Jamal's fists clenched under the desk. He didn't say anything, But this time, he didn't laugh either. At 11 a.m., the branch manager, Mr. Grant, called a sudden meeting. All staff were asked to gather in the main lobby. When everyone stood in place, he cleared his throat and said, "We may be getting a new senior manager soon, but until that's confirmed, I want all of you to focus on professional behavior." Some rolled their eyes. Some didn't care. But Jamal noticed something different. Mr. Grant looked nervous. After the meeting, Jamal stayed behind. "Sir," he asked quietly, "may I speak with you?" Mr. Grant looked surprised. "Yes, Jamal. What's on your mind?" Jamal swallowed. "It's about yesterday. About Lillian Carter." The manager raised an eyebrow. "Yes. I knew who she was before the interview ended," Jamal said. "I looked her up, and I wanted to speak up when the others mocked her. But I didn't." Mr. Grant nodded slowly. "And now?" Jamal looked him in the eyes. "Now I want to do better. I don't want to be silent anymore." For the first time, Mr. Grant smiled. A small, tired smile. "That's good, Jamal, because I think we'll all have to do better very soon." Jamal didn't fully understand what he meant until 2 days later. It was Thursday morning. A black luxury car pulled up in front of the bank. Everyone inside turned to look. The doors opened, and out stepped Lillian Carter, this time in a navy blue suit, her hair in a proud, natural style, and a gold name tag on her chest. It said, "District Executive, Lillian Carter." Jaws dropped. Conversations froze. Even the ones who had laughed now stared in silence. Lillian walked through the glass doors like she had walked through them 100 times before. Calm, confident, powerful. Behind her came 2 men in suits. They were from headquarters. Mr. Grant came out of his office, wiping his hands nervously. "Miss Carter, I wasn't expecting." She held up her hand gently. "Today is not a surprise visit, Mr. Grant. It's a review." She turned to face the staff. "My name is Lillian Carter," she said loudly. "Some of you saw me earlier this week, but you didn't really see me. You only saw my hair, my skin, my silence." Her voice was firm, but never angry. "And today, I'm not here for a job," she continued. "I'm here because I already have one. I've been sent to evaluate this branch's culture, to see who respects customers, who works with honesty, and who needs to find a new job." Gasps filled the room. No one said a word. Lillian walked forward, looking directly at the teller who had mocked her hair. The woman looked down, ashamed. Then Lillian's eyes met Jamal's. He stood taller. She smiled and gave him a small nod. The others noticed, and they wondered, why did she smile at the intern? Jamal knew the answer. Because she saw something in him. Hope. Because in a room full of noise, he was the only one who had quietly listened. The door stayed closed for hours. Lillian Carter was inside the manager's office with the 2 men from headquarters. The rest of the bank staff sat outside, pretending to work, but really, they were waiting. Waiting for news. Waiting for judgment. Waiting for the storm they knew was coming. Every small sound made heads turn. Every time the office door clicked, hearts skipped a beat. Nobody laughed anymore. Nobody gossiped. The same people who once made jokes about Lillian's hair were now whispering about something else. Do you think she'll fire someone? Is she going to report us? What if she already has a list? And she did. Jamal sat at his desk, typing slowly, but his mind was racing. He hadn't spoken to Lillian since her return, but he remembered her notebook, the way she had written in it without a word. Every time someone had treated her badly, she had written something. That notebook was her weapon. Just before lunch, the door finally opened. Lillian stepped out first, followed by the 2 corporate officers. She looked at the staff calmly. "I'd like to meet each of you," she said, one at a time. Everyone stiffened. She turned to Jamal. "You first." Jamal stood and followed her quietly. Inside the office, she asked him to sit. "I've been watching," she said softly. "Not just this week. I reviewed security footage, listened to customer complaints, checked internal records." Jamal nodded, nervous. "But I also noticed something else," she continued. You didn't laugh. You didn't mock. You just watched." He looked down. "I should have said something. I was scared." She smiled. "That's okay. Silence is not weakness if you grow from it." Then she handed him a white envelope. Inside was a letter. His hands trembled as he read. "Congratulations. You are being offered a permanent position at headquarters. Your honesty and quiet strength are needed there." Jamal looked up in shock. "Me? But I'm just an intern." "You were," she replied. "Now you're something more." Tears filled his eyes. "Thank you, Miss Carter." "Thank yourself," she said. "You earned it." Jamal walked out, smiling, his heart full, but the other staff looked at him with wide eyes. Why was he smiling? What had she told him? Then Lillian called the next name. One by one, staff members went into the office. Some came out silent. Some came out pale. One woman even came out crying. Each person had been judged, not by their resumes or looks, but by their behavior, their kindness, their truth. And the list was still going. Finally, it was Tanya's turn. She was the one who had laughed the loudest when Lillian first entered the bank. She sat down with forced confidence. Lillian didn't smile. She opened her notebook and turned to a page. "You were the first person I interacted with on my first visit," Lillian said. "You told me I looked like I had just rolled out of bed." Tanya looked uncomfortable. "I didn't mean it. You said it twice, once in front of a customer, once behind my back." Tanya tried to speak again, but Lillian raised her hand. "Your file also includes 5 customer complaints in the last 3 months, 3 warnings from your manager, and a note from another employee saying you bullied them." Tanya's voice cracked. "Please, don't fire me." Lillian looked at her for a long moment. "Do you know what my hair means to me?" Tanya stayed silent. "It means freedom. It means history. It means I don't have to change myself to please people like you." Tears rolled down Tanya's cheeks. Lillian handed her a different envelope. Inside was a letter that said, "Effective immediately, your employment at this branch is terminated. A recommendation for diversity training will be offered if you wish to reapply in the future." Tanya broke down, but there was no shouting, no anger, just quiet consequences. By the end of the day, 4 employees were fired. 2 were warned and placed under supervision. 1 was promoted. And Jamal was gone, sent to a better place where his honesty would shine. Before leaving, Lillian stood before the remaining team. "This wasn't about revenge," she said. "This was about respect. Every customer, every worker, every soul deserves dignity. And I will build a place where that's the rule, not the exception." No one clapped. No one cheered. But they listened. And they would never forget. The evening was calm. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and gold. The bank parking lot was almost empty. Everyone had gone home. Except Lillian. She was the last one to leave. As she walked toward her car, she noticed someone standing near the gate. A man. Tall. Quiet. Waiting. She stopped. He stepped forward, hands in his pockets. His face looked familiar, but older. Tired. His voice was soft. "You don't remember me, do you?" Lillian squinted. "Should I?" The man smiled sadly. "Maybe not. It was many years ago. I was just a boy then. Homeless. Hungry. Sitting on the church steps downtown." Lillian's eyes widened. She remembered. The boy with torn shoes. The one who refused to beg, but looked like he hadn't eaten in days. "You gave me your lunch," he continued. "You didn't say much, just said, 'This will pass, but don't lose your heart.' Then you left." She blinked slowly, memories flooding back. "I didn't forget your words," he said. I kept going, got a scholarship, became a lawyer. And now, he reached into his coat and pulled out a folder. I work for the same company you just saved. Lillian's eyebrows rose. You work for? He nodded. I'm one of the legal leads. When I heard your name during our internal meetings, I couldn't believe it. I asked to come here today, not just to thank you, but to warn you. Warn me, she asked. He looked around, lowered his voice. There's someone in corporate who doesn't like what you're doing. They don't want the culture to change. Your removals, your reviews, they're making waves. And someone powerful is planning to push you out. Lillian felt her heart sink, but her face stayed calm. Do you know who? He hesitated. Not yet, but I can find out. I just wanted you to be ready. She smiled gently. I've been ready for people trying to push me down my whole life. He nodded. I believe that. But this time, you're not alone. He handed her the folder. Inside were internal emails. Messages showing complaints against her leadership, none from customers or employees, only from upper management. Jealousy, fear, resistance. She closed the folder and looked up. Thank you. What's your name? He smiled. Marcus. Marcus Bell. She shook his hand. You've grown well, Marcus. And I'm here to help, he replied. Whatever you need. She nodded. Then stay close. This battle just got bigger. As she drove home, Lillian thought deeply. She had cleaned floors. She had served coffee. She had faced racism, rejection, and pain. But this was different. Now she had power. Now she had a voice. But it seemed someone wanted to silence it. The next morning, Lillian arrived early at the bank. She called Mr. Grant into her office. I want a full report of this branch's complaints, she said. Past 5 years, staff behavior, promotions, transfers, everything. Yes, Miss Carter, he said quickly. Also, she added, I want hidden feedback forms placed at the counter. Anonymous. For customers and staff. He nodded, writing it down. She looked him in the eyes. It's time we shine a light on everything. No more hiding. That day, her office stayed busy. More people came in, some scared, some relieved. One woman, a quiet janitor, told Lillian how she'd been ignored for years. Her voice never heard. But she had ideas. Good ones. Lillian listened to every word. And for the first time, the bank didn't feel cold. It felt alive. Meanwhile, Marcus worked from behind the scenes. He followed the email trail. He dug into the files. And then, he found it. A senior executive named Clark had been leading a quiet attack. Clark didn't believe in changing the system. He believed in keeping things the same. Safe, silent. He had even tried to block Lillian's appointment, but failed. Now, he was gathering support from others to push her out. Marcus sent Lillian the proof. And Lillian? She didn't panic. She prepared. That Friday, she sent an invitation to corporate. A special meeting to discuss regional leadership performance. Clark accepted. The boardroom was silent. The long glass table reflected the faces of the people seated around it. Executives in dark suits, eyes sharp, expressions unreadable. At the head of the table stood Lillian Carter, her back straight, her chin lifted. Her natural curls framed her face like a crown. In front of her were 3 thick files, neatly labeled, quietly dangerous. Clark, the senior executive, leaned back in his chair. I hope we can keep this professional, Miss Carter. Lillian gave a slight smile. That depends on how professional the truth feels to you. Marcus Bell, seated at the far end, gave her a small nod. He had worked through the night preparing. They both had. Lillian opened the first file and began to speak, not loudly, not angrily, but with strength. This folder contains 10 employee complaints from 3 different branches, ignored, buried, and eventually marked as resolved without action. She placed the folder on the table. "Here," she said, opening the second file, "are email chains showing racial bias in promotion decisions, including phrases like, 'not the right look,' and 'too urban for leadership.'" Some executives shifted in their seats. Clark's jaw tightened. Lillian moved on. "And this last folder," she said, placing her hand on the final stack, "contains messages from within this room, discussing how to remove me quietly." Clark sat up straighter. "That's not what those emails meant." Lillian didn't blink. "I think the words phase her out before she causes noise speak for themselves." A tense silence filled the room. Then she leaned forward. "I didn't come here to threaten anyone," she said. "I came here to change everything. And I will. Because this isn't just about me. This is about the voices that were laughed at, ignored, shamed. This is about every person who was told they didn't look the part." She turned toward Clark. "You're afraid," she said softly. "Not of me, but of what I represent. A world where kindness matters, where leaders don't all look like you, where truth wins." Clark tried to speak, but another executive cut in. "I think we need to review this more seriously," said a woman near the middle. "This is no longer about one branch. It's about the entire company culture." Marcus nodded. "We have enough evidence here to start a full internal review." Someone else whispered, "She's not wrong. Too many people have stayed quiet." The storm had arrived, but it wasn't Lillian who was caught in it. It was Clark. He stood suddenly. "This is madness. You're all being swept away by drama." Lillian stayed calm, then let the facts speak. She handed each person in the room a copy of the files. And then she walked out. Not in defeat, but in power. She didn't need to raise her voice, because she had already been heard. That evening, back at the branch, the mood was different. Staff gathered in the break room, talking in low voices, not afraid anymore, but hopeful. Jamal called in from headquarters to say thank you. He said they were putting up a wall of courage for employees who stood for change. The janitor smiled as she wiped the counters. "Feels like fresh air in here now." And the customers, they noticed too. One old woman reached across the counter and touched Lillian's hand. "Your hair is beautiful, dear," she said. "It shines like freedom." Lillian smiled. That night, when she got home, her phone buzzed. It was an email from the company CEO. She opened it slowly. It was Saturday morning. The sky was quiet. The streets were nearly empty. And Lillian Carter stood outside a small building made of old red bricks. Riverdale Community School. The place where she once sat in the back row, afraid to raise her hand. The place where her hair was laughed at, where teachers told her, "You're not leadership material." And now she had returned. Not as a student, not even as a guest, but as someone who had proven them all wrong. She stepped inside the old hallway. The floors creaked beneath her heels. The smell of chalk and old wood filled the air. Children's laughter echoed in the distance. A teacher peeked out from a classroom and did a double take. "Can I help you, miss?" she asked politely. Lillian smiled. "I'm here to see Principal Hayes." The woman nodded slowly, eyes widening. You're Lillian Carter." She nodded. "He's in his office, down the hall to the left." Lillian walked quietly, her heels tapping against the floor. She stopped at the old door, the same one she once stood outside, years ago, trembling, holding back tears after being told she'd never make it. She knocked once. "Come in," the voice called. The door opened. Mr. Hayes sat behind the desk. His hair was grayer now, his face more tired. But his expression didn't change when he looked up. "Oh," he said, leaning back, "it's you." "Yes," Lillian said calmly, stepping inside. "It's me." He gestured to a chair. "Have a seat." She didn't. She stood tall, her eyes meeting his. "Do you remember what you told me when I was 16? She asked softly. He squinted. "I told a lot of kids things. You told me," she said, her voice steady, "that no one would ever take me seriously with that kind of hair. That girls like me should be realistic and aim for simple jobs." He gave a short laugh. "It was advice. Tough love. Look at you now. Seems like it worked." "No," she replied. "I succeeded despite what you said, not because of it." He shrugged. "Well, not everyone can be a CEO. Life isn't fair." She reached into her bag and placed a magazine on his desk. The cover read, "The Woman Who Changed Banking Culture, Lillian Carter, Regional Director of Ethics and Culture." His eyes widened. Underneath the photo, in bold letters, it read, "She fought the system that tried to erase her, and won." "You see," Lillian said, "I came back today not to prove you wrong. That's already done." "Then why are you here?" he asked, a bit defensive. She looked around the office, then back at him. "I'm here for the next girl like me. The one sitting in that back row right now. The one you might ignore. I want to talk to your students, all of them, especially the ones who don't feel seen." Hayes frowned. "This isn't a motivational center." She cut him off gently. "No, but it should be." He stayed silent. She continued, "You can either let me speak to them, or I'll hold the event across the street. Trust me, they'll come either way." There was a pause. Then, reluctantly, he nodded. "Fine. 1 hour." Later that day, the school auditorium was full. Students, parents, even some staff sat in the chairs, waiting. Lillian walked onto the small stage. Her curls were big, bold, free. She wore no fancy jewelry, just confidence, and a soft smile. She looked out at the kids, especially the ones sitting alone, the ones who looked like she used to. "I want to tell you something," she said. "People will look at you and decide who they think you are, because of your hair, your skin, your voice, the way you walk, the way you speak." She paused. "But you don't have to listen to them." Some students sat up straighter. "I was told I'd never be more than a cleaner, a helper, a background character in someone else's story." She pointed to her chest. "But I rewrote the story. And now, I help others do the same." She walked down the steps and stood close to the front row. "I want you to remember this. You are not too loud. You are not too different. You are not too much. You are just enough." The room went quiet. A little girl in the front whispered, "Your hair looks like mine." Lillian smiled and knelt beside her. "Then you must be magic too." Final scene. That evening, Lillian sat on a bench outside the school. Marcus joined her, holding 2 cups of coffee. "You really shook them today," he said. She took the cup. "I didn't want revenge. I just wanted truth." He nodded. "You gave it." They sat quietly. Across the street, a group of students walked past. One of them, a black girl with tight braids, ran up to Lillian. "Miss Carter," she said breathlessly, "I'm going to be like you one day." Lillian smiled, her eyes soft. "No," she said, "you're going to be greater." And with that, the little girl ran back to her friends, her laugh echoing into the night. Lillian leaned back on the bench. The world hadn't changed overnight, but it had started, and so had she.